Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to Rising with Grace. This teaching, I will be speaking about something that many people silently struggle with, victim mentality. And before you misunderstand this message, this is not about judging anyone or shaming anyone or attacking pain. No. This message is about healing. It's about understanding the difference between being wounded and becoming trapped in the wound. Because many people are hurting deeply, but they don't realize that sometimes pain can slowly become an identity. And when that happens, it can quietly block your growth. Healing, accountability, peace, and even purpose. So, this place is coming from a place of love and of teaching. Let's begin. The hidden prison of victim mentality. The pain is real, but staying there becomes a trap. There's something important people misunderstand about victim mentality. It does not mean the person was never hurt. Many people in victim mentality were genuinely betrayed, rejected, abandoned, manipulated, overlooked, abused, disappointed, humiliated, and broken by life. The wound was real. The danger begins when the pain stops being something that happened to them and starts becoming who they are. That shift is subtle at first. The mind says, "This hurt me." Later it quietly becomes, "This is just my life. Nothing ever works for me. People always do this to me. I can never catch a break. Why even try?" And eventually, this is who I am. That's where pain becomes identity. And once pain becomes identity, healing feels threatening. Because now you are not just asking the person to heal. You are asking them to become someone unfamiliar. That terrifies people more than they realize. One of the biggest moments or realizations there are familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar healing. A lot of people don't stay stuck because they enjoy suffering. They stay stuck because suffering becomes predictable. Predictable pain feels safer than uncertain growth. That is why someone can complain constantly about toxic relationships, financial struggle, emotional chaos, laziness, unhealthy cycles, self-sabotage, and still resist change when opportunities appear. Because healing introduces responsibility. And responsibility is frightening when someone has lived emotionally powerless for a long time. Victim mentality often says, if I never try fully, I never have to risk failure fully. That is deep and also sad. It outlines a very scared person. Some people stay stuck not because they are incapable. No, they are capable. But because failure feels less painful than hope disappointed again. So they unconsciously choose limitation over vulnerability. Victim mentality loves sympathy more than solutions. And this is one of the hardest truths. A person trapped in victim mentality often receives emotional comfort from pity. Yeah, if you feed into their pity party, they believe that is what they need. But not intentionally manipulative, or, it's not intentionally manipulative all the time. Sometimes it's unconsciously. Sympathy temporarily soothes pain, but guidance, that challenges pain. Sympathy says, oh shame, that's terrible. Growth says, you deserve better, but something must change. And change feels confronting, because if healing becomes possible, then excuses begin losing its power. That's why some people reject advice, but repeatedly retell the pain. Not because they necessarily want healing yet, but because they want emotional validation. Validation feels safe, and transformation feels demanding. Victim mentality protects people from responsibility, but also from freedom. This is one of the most tragic parts. Responsibility sounds heavy at first, but responsibility is actually power. Because the moment someone says, my choices matter, my feelings matter, my mindset matters, my habits matter, my boundaries matter, they become dangerous to the cycle that once controlled them. Victim mentality says, I have no power. Healing power says, maybe I didn't cause all the pain, but I still have responsibility for my future. That sentence changes lives, because mature healing understands one thing. You can be wounded without remaining powerless. You can acknowledge injustice without surrendering your future. And you can grieve deeply without building your home inside grief. The comfort zone is not always comfortable. Sometimes it is simply familiar. People imagine comfort zones as happiness. Not true. A comfort zone is simply a psychological environment that nervous system recognizes. And all that means is chaos can become comfortable. Toxic love can become comfortable. Dysfunction can become comfortable. Procrastination can become comfortable. Anxiety can become comfortable. Emotional dependence can become comfortable. Why? Because the brain prioritizes familiarity before freedom. That is why people repeat painful cycles they swear they hate, and deep down truly believe and mean they hate it. But the nervous system whispers, at least we know this pain. Healing requires entering emotional unfamiliarity. That's why growth feels awkward at first. A person healing may actually feel guilty, uncomfortable, uncertain, even emotionally naked. Not because healing is wrong, but because the old self is losing control. Spiritually, victim mentality can quietly become bondage. This part goes deep. When someone lives in constant victim mentality and identity long enough, hopelessness starts shaping how they see God, how they see people, opportunities, how they see themselves, and how they see the future. They stop expecting breakthrough. They stop believing they can rise. They stop believing they deserve peace. Some even become emotionally addicted to defeat, not because they want misery, but because hopelessness became familiar. Spiritually, this is dangerous because victim mentality slowly steals gratitude, faith, responsibility, courage, perseverance, accountability, vision. The person starts speaking death over themselves constantly. I'll never change. Nothing good happens to me. People always leave. I'm just broken. They've got everything. I've got nothing. Listen to what I'm about to tell you because this matters deeply. Words have immense power. What you declare repeatedly often becomes the emotional environment we live inside. Some people would rather be understood than healed. That sounds harsh until you really sit with it. And I've experienced this. I've lived through situations like this with people very close to me. Healing requires confronting patterns, admitting self-sabotage, grieving honestly, forgiving completely, definitely changing habits, taking uncomfortable action, risking rejection, letting go of old identities. That is hard work emotionally. Being understood feels easier. But understanding alone does not transform lives. You can understand your trauma for 20, 30 years and still remain trapped in it. Insight without movement becomes emotional imprisonment with vocabulary. That is powerful. The secondary gain nobody talks about. Victim mentality sometimes carries hidden emotional rewards. Not consciously, always, but subconsciously. Staying wounded can provide attention, lowered expectations, avoidance of responsibility, emotional protection, identity, sympathy, excuses for not taking or risking failure. Excuses for not risking failure. Avoidance of accountability. This is why healing can feel like loss. Because now people expect more. Excuses weaken. Growth becomes necessary. Accountability increases. And suddenly, freedom feels heavier than captivity. That is why some people sabotage progress right when life starts improving. Just at that moment when life starts improving, self-sabotage mode kicks in full force. Their identity was built around surviving, not thriving. The fear beneath it all. What if I try and still fail? That's the main underlying fear here. What if I try and still fail? This is often the hidden wound underneath victim mentality. Not laziness, not weakness, fear. And we have to remember, fear is not from God. He says He did not give us a spirit of fear. In my opinion, fear is false evidence appearing real. Fear of what? Fear of disappointment, fear of rejection, fear of humiliation, of abandonment, of vulnerability, of responsibility, fear of hope. Because hope is risky. A hopeless person never has to risk shattered expectations again. That's why cynicism, sorry, what a tongue twister. That is why cynicism can feel emotionally safer than faith. Sad truth. Healing requires courage most people never see. Healing is not motivational quotes. Healing is waking up and trying again. Facing memories honestly. Stopping self-sabotage and self-destruction. Setting boundaries and sticking to them. Taking responsibility. Admitting unhealthy patterns. Healing is forgiving slowly. Rebuilding discipline. Grieving what was never. Phantom things. Choosing growth when emotions resist it. Feeling is warfare against the version of you that learned to survive through fear. And survival mechanisms are hard to release because they once protected you. This is important, not to shame the survival mechanism. Do not shame the survival mechanism. Honor the fact that it helped you survive once. But also recognize what protects you in one season can imprison you in another. A child may survive by shutting down emotionally, but an adult cannot build healthy connection while emotionally closed forever. At some point, survival must evolve into healing. It must. A powerful perspective shift. Your pain may explain you, but it must not now permanently define you. You know, this changes everything. There's compassion in understanding why someone became the way they are, sure. But there must also be responsibility. Because endless excuses eventually become self-abandonment. At some point, healing sounds like, yes, this hurt me deeply. Yes, it affected me. Yes, it changed parts of me. But I refuse to let it own the rest of my life. That is where power returns. Victim mentality also often waits for healing before action. Healing people learn the opposite. It's like their brain is wired back to front. If someone waits to feel motivated, if someone waits to feel confident, to feel ready, to feel fearless, they may stay stuck forever. Because growth often begins where emotions agree. Growth often begins before emotions agree. Courage is not absence of fear. Courage is movement despite fear. And confidence is usually built after action, not before it. The difference between a wounded person and a victim mindset. This distinction matters deeply. A wounded person says, I am hurting. A victim mindset says, I can never rise. I can't, I won't, I can't. A wounded person is honest about pain. A victim mindset builds a permanent home inside pain. A wounded person seeks healing eventually. A victim mindset resists responsibility indefinitely. One acknowledges suffering, the other surrenders identity to suffering. Final emotional truth: nobody heals by being shamed. People heal when truth and compassion meet together. Too much softness enables destruction. Too much harshness deepens shame. Real growth sounds like, I see your pain. I believe your wounds are real. You deserve better in many moments, but your future still matters. You are not powerless. Your story is not over. You can heal. You can rebuild. You definitely can rise. But nobody can walk that journey for you. That responsibility is on you. And that right there is where transformation begins.